Welcome, World History students. Miss Edelin speaking. I would like to remind you, students, that your homework for next class is to take notes on this lecture. I will provide you opportunities to earn bonus points if you will listen closely to the lecture. And then when you're finished, there is a set of questions in the Chinese folder that need to be submitted by midnight of the night before your notes are due. So let us proceed talking about China's classical age from section 4 or 5 of your text on 93. The last time we talked about Chinese government prior to fall break, we knew that China was in a period of chaos. It was known as the Warring States and lasted for about from 256 to 221 BCE. Remember, the Zhao government broke down into feudalism. Out of this chaos is going to arise a warlord named Zheng, and he is going to take about 20 years. It's not going to be an easy deal, but he's going to conquer and unite these warring feudal states. As a result, he is going to take the title Shi Huangdi, which means first emperor. And by the way, I want you to know that title and what it means. I will refer to him that way. Now, he's going to centralize power and use legalism as his philosophy. If you recall from our lesson the other day, legalism is pretty new. It developed in the 200s BCE. And for one of your bonus points, I would like you to email me either through edelinc@fatherbrian.org or Schoology and tell me why it only makes kind of common sense that Shi Huangdi would choose this as his philosophy. And we do know that because he's going to be a legalist, he's going to use harsh punishments and rewards to build his strong central government, and he's going to call his dynasty the Qin dynasty. Notice it starts with a Q, but I pronounced it like a CH. That is the correct way to pronounce it. And if you look at the different spellings of Qin, notice that it's sometimes spelled just like the word Qin, and this is where we can see the name China is derived from this dynasty. So it was very important. Let's talk about how Shi Huangdi, even though he's using legalism and harsh punishments, how he's going to politically and economically unite China. One way he's going to do it is he's going to just plain out end feudalism. And what he did was he took the feudal states and replaced them with his own military districts governed by people loyal to him. This was a very intelligent move on his part. He's also going to send spies out to make sure the local officials are doing what he wants. And he's going to force those noble families that were in the various states to come live in his capital city so he could keep an eye on them. Okay? And if you didn't go along, if you decided you were going to dissent or disagree, that's one of your vocab words, dissent, he's going to jail you, torture you, kill you. He's also going to burn any books that disagree with his legalist philosophy. He thought Confucianism was for the birds. He did not think it was a very good philosophy. But on the positive note, he is going to standardize weights and measures. In fact, your book gives an example of how, back in the day, you didn't have lots of paved roads, and on rainy days, wagons are going to wear ruts into the paths. And they didn't have standard axle lengths, or widths, I guess is more correct. And a lot of wagons got broken axles as a result of all the ruts being unequal in size. So he standardized axle widths. That was one of the things that Shi Huangdi did. He also reduced the number of characters in the Chinese written language, and there was more uniformity as a result. He's going to strengthen the transportation system, and one of his claims to fame is he's going to order the building of the Great Wall. Now, we do know that the pieces of the wall were already in place because the feudal lords themselves had walls, so he actually built sections in between that united the walls that already existed, and he strengthened them. We know he used forced labor, and this is one of the things that he did to protect China from the northern invaders. We know that sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. It did slow people down from invading China. And the Great Wall that we know today, that we're very familiar with, is not the original wall. We know that over time it's had to be rebuilt in places. Isn't that gorgeous? So let's talk about the fact that although he was a brutal leader, Shi Huangdi is going to set up this classical period because he, later on, all the other dynasties that come after are going to copy the patterns of government, philosophy, religion, and science, and the arts that he set forward with his Qin dynasty. Also, Shi Huangdi is the man who had the terracotta soldiers, if you're familiar with those. He had those built to protect his grave, which is not pictured in this diagram here. These are just the soldiers who are guarding his grave. And the Chinese government has not unearthed his grave out of respect for the deceased emperor. It was a farmer digging in his fields in the 1970s. So this is a 20th century discovery who found these terracotta soldiers. We do know that this has been looted because at one time these soldiers actually had weapons that were out of metal, and the metal is no longer around. But notice the detail on the soldiers, the face, their costumes. You see these horses back here, hundreds of figures, unbelievable work of art here under Shi Huangdi, and this is just a close-up of a soldier here. He died unexpectedly. He was out actually visiting some further out cities, and the story goes that when he died, they knew there was going to be a little succession problem with who was going to take over, so they didn't want anyone to know. So they took his deceased body, put it in a box, covered the box with dead fish. Now, you can email me with the reason why they did that, okay? And I'll give you a bonus point for why they did that. But when they got back to the city, the jig was up. People found out he was already dead, and there was fighting that ensued. And that is going to lead to the collapse of the Qin dynasty. We're going to have an explosion of revolts because of the heavy taxes, the forced labor, and his cruel policies. They just caught up with the state. And we're going to have an illiterate peasant emerge as the leader. His name is Liu Bang, and he is going to take over slowly. Notice we do have a small period, not as long as the Warring States, a 4-year period here where there's fighting. And Bang will establish what becomes known as the Han Dynasty. That's how you pronounce that. He's going to restore order and peace by lowering taxes and easing those harsh policies that Shi Huangdi had in place. And he's going to push to unify China, but he's going to try something different. He's going to use Confucian scholars. So Confucianism as the new policy. And it will help strengthen the foundations of the Han Dynasty, which, by the way, lasted from 206 BCE to CE 220 or AD 220. So how long did the Han Dynasty last? It lasted approximately 400 years. That's a long time. So let's look at one of the greatest Han leaders, Emperor Wudi, who ruled around 141 BCE. And he's going to take China to its height in politics and economics by improving canals and roads. He's going to actually collect grain from farmers, and therefore he would keep the surplus so that he could stabilize the price of grain, especially like if there was a drought the next year, so that the price wouldn't go up so high it would be, impossible for the peasants to feed themselves. He also is going to impose a monopoly for the government to own the iron and salt workings of the state. And in case you don't know what a monopoly is, that means that the government had complete control. No business could own the iron or the salt production. And this was kind of a brilliant move. It gave the government a source of income other than taxing the people, so they had a way to make money. He is going to continue to expand China. He's going to maintain the Great Wall, but he's going to do something that hadn't been done yet. He's going to open up a trade route known as the Silk Road. Again, Woody's going to open up the Silk Road, which is that's going to link China with the West. It's a trade route. Woody, as well as other emperors, are really going to work the Confucian angle of things. They believed that if you worked for the government, you should get that position by merit. In other words, you should earn it rather than inherit it through your family. And so they're going to set up something really new in China. They're going to set up the civil service exams. Now, make sure you learn that term. It just means that you worked for the government, and they wanted to find the most qualified officials. This is really going to revolutionize government in China. Originally, eventually, in theory, any man could take the exam. But we know that remember, wealthy men are going to be able to afford the years of study because the Chinese writing was very difficult. Now, once in a while, an intelligent peasant boy could be fronted the money by a wealthy individual or his village and go get the education and possibly get a job in the government, which would bring the whole family and even the village a higher profile, like so-and-so came from our village and he works for the government now. So the civil service exam is going to really impact China. It's going to lead to a stable government regardless of which dynasty ruled, and it's going to prove important in China for over 2,000 years. So let's talk about the Han Golden Age. We're going to see many advances during this time period. In fact, even today, Chinese call themselves the people of Han because of the revolutionary advances during this golden age. In science, we're going to see the use of the seismograph to measure earthquakes. We're going to make so many good observations of stars and planets that the Chinese had the most accurate calendar of the time, 365.25 days like we have today. And also they wrote textbooks on various scientific topics, as well as in medicine, diagnosing diseases, developing anesthetics, and exploring the uses of acupuncture, which uses needles to kind of make the flow of energy through a person's body. I have a couple of pictures of acupuncture here and the needles used in that practice. In technology, we've already kind of done this when we had our little scavenger hunt. They're going to invent things like the rudder, fishing reel, wheelbarrows, suspension bridges, paper, and then different methods for shipbuilding. And in the arts, we're going to see a lot of architecture as well as small figurines and improvements in silk making and bronze working. And of course, the collapse of the Han is going to be similar to other dynasties that fall. We're going to see that the leaders become weak and they show signs of corruption. They're going to lose that mandate of heaven because there's going to be decay and loss of attention to infrastructure, which is going to lead to peasant revolts and the rise of warlords. And that's going to then, they're going to have little resistance then to outsiders that come in. They're going to be easily able to invade over the Great Wall. So without further ado, let me just remind you about the questions in the Chinese folder that are due midnight the night before these notes are due. And I'll talk to you guys later.